Okay, thanks for that introduction. Industry veteran is definitely what I am. You can see that by the hairstyle that I'm running with. It's great to be here today. It's a kind of a bit more of a change in topic from where we were to look at the security and security world. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. If you can confirm that everything can be seen. That would be great. Are we all good?
Yes, we can see your screen. I would request you to go full screen. Yes, that's
great. Okay, so I've been asked to come here today to present, about security testing. We specifically look at applications, but I wanted to start this presentation with some statements about what's happening. The bad guys are increasing. We're seeing more and more events, more and more break-ins happening on a daily basis. I mean, even today there was a news of a break-in on a Bitcoin area where they stole a load of Bitcoins. But the reason is that Bitcoin has been an enabler for these bad guys. Previously, if they went into an organization and tried to hold it to ransom, there's a paper trail of the payments that are being made. Whereas Bitcoin has now meant that they don't need that anymore. And so there is this massive surge in the bad guys getting out there because it's an easy way for them to make money for those accounts that are not paying attention. We're also seeing an increase in state sponsorship of these kind of things. Sanctions are being put into various different countries. So as a way around the sanctions, what they're doing is they're developing their bad guy team to go and get ransomware from other organizations. The other thing that's really happened is that, COVID has changed everything. I mean, when we were talking earlier on about sort of acceleration on IT and sort of customer experience, more and more people are being driven into this digital world because it's the only way that we've been able to cope over the last 18 months. And so there's been massive change in the way organizations are interacting with their customers, as just being explained. And this has now led to different security issues because we are even more dependent than we were 18 months ago on IT. There's another problem that kind of comes across with this is that the security teams that were in place 18 months ago haven't changed. They're pretty much the same size. And there's two reasons for this. One is that there's not enough new people coming on board to be able to go and recruit those security people. The second thing is that, again, coming back into this COVID world, is that they've had to split shift patterns to ensure that they're having a continuation of security service. So these teams are being stretched left, right, and center. Whenever I've spoken to any of my customers, there has been one statement, and this is the statement that's come up when I ask them, if I could give you anything, what could I give you? And they always ask for time because they are being swamped with all these changes, all these increases in the threat landscape, and they haven't the time in which to deal with these things. And unfortunately for you guys, the Middle East is definitely being targeted as an area that is lucrative for effectively ransomware. And it is costing your companies at the moment because people will just literally pay. And that is a really bad cycle because payments are being made, then the bad guys go, great, this is even better to go and attack into here because we're being paid. Whereas if you look at some of the other countries, they've got a zero tolerance and they won't pay and they'll struggle through the pain of getting their systems back up and running. And so for the Middle East, it's a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, is that the more that people pay, the more that these guys will go and attack. But it's not just the dollars. It's not just the $1 million that they ask for as a payment to release the IT systems. It's the reputational damage that can potentially be done by having a break-in and having these issues occur. One of the things that I've definitely noticed is that the companies that come out more successfully with this are the people that admit right up front that there's been an issue, tell the customers what the issue, tell the customers what the issue is, what has or hasn't been lost, or what they were able to achieve, rather than those that tried to hide it and the information came out later. So what is it that my company does? We produce dynamic application security testing. So what this is the solution that is software that replicates what these bad guys are doing. They're trying to break into their network. So effectively, that's what our software is doing on an ongoing, regular basis, to be able to ensure that at any moment in time, the applications and the web-facing software is responding and clean so that it can't be broken into. How did we come about? Well, there was two market leaders, one called Akinetics and the other called NetSparker. Both of these organizations claim that they were #1 in this marketplace. And there was a fight for a number of years about, who was #1. And so in 2018, it was decided that rather than fighting against each other for this #1 slot, they should merge together. And so Invicti Security was born. We specialize in this dynamic application security testing. That's our marketplace. We focus very laser focused on doing, producing the best product in this market. We've got a number of flexible deployment models, whether you're running your software on cloud, you want it on premise because of government reasons, whether you're doing a private cloud hybrid, it doesn't matter from our point of view. We can work and test it out. Our solutions address the whole marketplace, from entry-level systems, so security engineers that come out to organizations that do pen testing, and they'll do that pen test and certification. We'll use our software to do that, right the way up to our enterprise flagship products with our NetSparker Enterprise and Akinetics 360. To give you an idea of some of the companies, these are great slides that organization puts out, but there's a couple of highlights that I want to mention. One is Hsbc. Hsbc secures all their applications globally with our solution. So it is ours that we're doing daily tests across the world to make sure that none of their sites have got vulnerabilities within them. It's thousands of websites, so we have to be scalable up to that size, and we have to obviously be trusted because it's a bank. And so that creates a great example. Now, we have a lot of companies in Saudi that we also have. I can take those offline and discuss those with people on a one-to-one if they want to know who they are. But there's a lot of government and commercial and financial organizations. But it's not something that we can publicly kind of show in a slide like this. Because we're focused on this marketplace, we're definitely something that it is not a question of buying a solution and it stays still. There is a whole evolution and product roadmap of all the extra features that are being added onto this, such as service level agreement monitoring, et cetera, et cetera. So really this slide is about, there is a future within the product. It's not static. But here's the kicker. Why? Why do we need to do this? Well, we talked earlier about the threat landscape changing. I mentioned about the ransomware that's going on, but why dust? Well, 28% of hacks are now through the application. It's the fastest growing sector of hacks in IT at the moment. And the reason for this is quite simple, is that over the time, firewalls have increased, they've got better, we've got traps, we've got the ability to secure down the network, there's been network security testing solutions. And so all these doors have been closing off to the bad guys, and the applications are the one they're on at the moment. And I'm going to give you two examples of this. so that you can see why and where. The first one is Florida Water. Now, Florida Water, literally that was 6 weeks ago that this one took place. Florida Water, large organization, they did all the right things. They had the pen testers that would come in, they would visit, they would look at the sites, they would look at the network, they'd look at the applications, and they would give a result to Florida Water saying, you're good and you're secure. And this is what happened. They had their annual pen test, it worked fine, they got their certificate, everything was happy. Problem was that 6 months later, someone found a vulnerability. They weren't trying to get to Florida Water though. That's not what they were interested in. What they were interested in was Florida Water's customers. And so what they did, they put an exploit on the website. So customers such as myself, if I was in Florida, would come on board and I'd put my username, I'd put my password in, which typically I use for all my other accounts as well, because unfortunately that's what people do. And then I would then give my bank details over to pay my water bill. And what they did was that they siphoned that information off. And they sat there for 6 months taking all these customers' information. Now, it wasn't just the Andy Davises of this world that was providing them with a lucrative ability to go and sell my information on the dark web, but they also had now usernames and passwords of corporations that were using Florida Water. And they could then break into their accounts and do either similar things or hold them to ransom or whatever it is that they're doing. So Florida Water themselves, it didn't really cost them in terms of a ransomware, but it did cost them big time in terms of their reputation, and it did cost them, in terms of what they had to do to fix it, and there's legal things happening at the moment about it. So that was a real issue, but the target was not Florida Water; it was their customers. We can also look at the Kasaya Hack, which literally has it just happened last month, where what happened is Kasaya is a payment system and solution that corporations use. What happened was that the bad guys broke into the application. The application from Kasaya was then sent out to all their customers. All their customers then turned around and started, were using it unaware that this break had happened, until such time as everybody got locked down. And Swedish Co-op Supermarket was one of those customers where they had all their business stopped. Their shops were shut, and they were on, pay the ransom, or you're going to have to dig yourself out of it, which is what they chose to do. So, application hacks are big, and this is the way people are exploiting it. And what we do is that we help stop that kind of thing taking place. But there's a number of challenges with doing this. The first one is that if you go and test all these applications, you'll set off your scanner, it will go out and it will say, oh, here's this vulnerability, here's that vulnerability. But now we have the problem is we've now got to manually check every single one of those vulnerabilities that are produced by the software that will, to make sure that they are a true vulnerability, before sending them off to the application team to get fixed. Because you don't want to send that to the application team and the application team say, well, there's nothing wrong with it. So the poor old security team, going back to that, we want more time, end up checking through all of these things, making sure they're good or not. That means that you can't scale. If I go back to Hsbc, how with their thousands of applications and thousands of websites can they scale to do that when a test takes place over them? They'd have to have, hundreds of security engineers just sitting there every day looking through all the scans to see what's going on, making sure that they're not a false positive or not. So scaling and automation becomes a huge problem. And then the other thing is that there's that lack of innovation, of the ability to continually look and work on the vulnerabilities and work on how we best integrate in with customers. So these are the customer challenges that are faced. So how do we overcome that? Well, the first part is on discovery. You can't secure what you don't know. So therefore, the very first thing that we do is that we discover the web assets that you have by crawling across those assets and getting every little detail. It's amazing the amount of times we've done a proof of concept. I would say at least 60 to 70% of the time, customers have gone, oh, we didn't know we've got that. And that's a threat. Now, it could be a really old website and it's not really a problem, but the fact is that it's something that's popped up and hasn't popped down again. And so therefore it is potentially a weak point. And so, you know, we don't do anything with it. They just press the delete button and that particular area is gone. But you can't secure what you don't know. And we find that. So that's step one. Step two is the scanners that we were talking about earlier to detect the vulnerabilities. You know, I will argue that we have the fastest and we have the best and more detailed scanner than anybody else. You know, we can prove that with our proof of concepts. But, you know, we are the merger of the two largest organizations in this field. We have the biggest R&D team, and so therefore we're right on top of that particular element. But here's the real point that makes the difference between us and what we can do, is that we can actually certify those vulnerabilities. So if we do a whole series of scans, we can take them and we can prove 100% what the vulnerability is. If we can do that, we can automate. And if we can do that, we can also suggest how to fix the problem. And that's exactly what we do. We link up to issue tracking systems or CI/CD systems. We can automate the process because we can prove it's the vulnerability. Security team doesn't have to check it. The application team gets information that's insightful and can actually show them where they need to fix the particular problem. So here's the vulnerability. This is what you do to remediate it. And then after you've done it, when you send it back out to go into the real world, we'll test it again, make sure it's been fixed. If it has, we allow it out. If not, it goes back again into the cycle until it is fixed. And then we do a continuous series of scans. So what's happening is, instead of doing that once a year as Florida Water did, we are doing it on a weekly or fortnightly or whatever frequency basis is that you want to schedule and what's best for your business. And so that takes us through the five-step process. And again, just to sort of highlight, you know, the key differentiating features is that this is what we focus on. Application security testing is our marketplace. We don't do anything else. We can prove 100% that the exploit is real. And by doing that, that allows us to automate. And because we can automate, we're able to remediate as well. So I've overrun, I'm terribly sorry, by 2 minutes. Thanks a lot for your time and for listening. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.